stops here. Okay. Stop streaming, start streaming. Starting, stream health is green. Okay, hopefully that means we are live. So we might as well just hang around and make sure that people are seeing us. But in the meantime, what's the attitude like out there? Are people, feeling the strain? Are people not going outside and all the rest of it?
It's weird. I mean, it is undeniably, there's a bit of a strange vibe. And I think I might have mentioned this before, but initially the first week or so, there was nobody. Like commuting from west side of Toronto to east side of Toronto, taking like city streets, which normally would be maybe an hour to get from one side to the other, maybe more. Now it's like, boom, 20 minutes. It's amazing. But I feel like, in the past couple of weeks, people are getting used to it. And I don't think people are being more daring. I don't think they're saying, problem solved, let's get back out again. It's just there seem to be more people needing to get, like they feel cooped up and they got to get out. So you see couples, right? You'll see like everywhere. And sometimes when I'm walking my dog after work, it feels like there's more people outside now than there would be normally. But I just think, Monday to Friday, you never see anybody. And on the weekends, it's kind of crazy. But no, it's weird, man. Everybody's stressed. I have friends, I have a very good friend of mine is, in healthcare. She works in a hospital. And so it's been like really challenging for her. I have, my dad's in his late 60s, high risk category for a couple of reasons, grandparent that I can't see who's in, like one of the big retirement facilities here, nursing homes, and I can't visit them because I'm not allowed. So I think it's impacted everybody. It's really crazy.
Well, one of my best friends, she is a nurse. She went to school for nursing and worked out in Drumheller. I don't know if you know where that is, but tiny little town. She worked as a nurse and loved her job, but found the strain of it, and she is currently in that transition of taking a break. But because there's such a high demand of nurses, the job that she is currently in, which is totally unrelated to nursing, has been put on hold. And the BC government has just given her a nursing license instantly to try and get her to come to work and all the rest of it, because I suppose that's the demand, that's the need for people out there to help them out.
It's crazy, man. I mean, I think being a nurse, being, whether you're a physical therapist or a nurse or a doctor, if you're working in sort of a healthcare center, it's crazy, man. The best of times. I think it's job, but then like layer in the stress of the, the shit show that we have on our hands right now. And I can't even imagine it. Like I'm fortunate that I can do most of my job from home, but a lot of people can't. So,
yeah. Well, I think I was watching the news the other day, and it's 30% of Americans can work from home. They have a job that's enabled them to go and work from their computer in their house, whilst the other 70% have either been laid off or they work in some kind of essential work, maybe construction or work at the grocery store, something like that. So, but let's now get off this topic because we are live and people are coming in. So
we're like, wait a minute, isn't this a card channel? Why are we talking about nurses and
Well, it's just with the times, right? I'm afraid that's the only conversation people are having. But we'll get things started right off the bat. Hello, everyone that is watching. You know me, of course, maybe not without this much facial hair. This is what happens when you go into isolation. You forget what hygiene is. But I'm here today with a good friend of mine, Mike Gurr, and I know plenty of you who have seen the posts that I put up on YouTube previously and on my Instagram were asking who Mike is. Now, this is strange because, well, I've kind of known you for about 2 years, and I feel like there should be some overlap.
3 years,
why
maybe.
People know me. 3 years, why people know me and why they know you. So I'll let you take this away and give a quick description of who you are, where we might have seen you before, and then we can move on into kind of what we want to try and do together.
So the reason why our worlds overlap is because we both got our start with Zach Spencer over at Motormouth. So Motormouth on YouTube, Zach Spencer, kind of OG Canadian automotive journalist. He's now on Motoring TV, I believe, but was previously on Driving Television, which was, syndicated nationally, played, I think, every Saturday. And I actually grew up watching his show when I was a kid, a teenager. I always watched his shows on the weekend. And anyway, so I'm following his YouTube channel about 3 years ago. A call goes out saying, hey, I'm looking for someone to help. Take a shot of your car, send me the file. If you win, you can join my team, and what will you get in return? You'll get sweet access to test vehicles, basically. And so as a guy who is, diehard car lover my whole life, nothing sounded better than, the access to some fantastic vehicles that I never dreamed of being able to drive. So I had no experience, I didn't even own a camera. I borrowed one from a friend, edited, on his laptop, put something together, submitted it. Anyways, long story short, ended up winning the contest, I guess it was. And who finished a very close second was this gentleman, this gentleman right here, this bearded gentleman right here.
Hello.
I too was aware of you, and I think we actually touched base pretty soon after that. One of the other reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm so and so, and what do you do?" And then periodically we'd check in with each other, tips and tricks, or someone would buy someone's equipment and just kind of bitch and moan about the challenges of zero budget, auto production, kind of learning the ropes.
The unique world that we're exposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to confide in someone that is feeling the same stresses or same challenges as you. But I think it was you that reached out to me because you got the gig, and maybe like a year and a half afterwards, I reached out to Zach because by that time I had my own channel. I was able to make my own videos, and then I think he put his announcement out, and then you reached out to me, and then chatting every once in a while to make sure things were good with each other. So that's kind of our origin story, independent of or depending on Zach Spencer, who of course we need to give many thanks to. But the next thing to discuss and why we're making this live stream right now is a month ago I was out in Toronto and we made a couple videos together. Now, one of them comes out tomorrow with the Mazda MX-5 RF 2019 model. And then we'll have another car the week following. But this all came along this terrible pandemic that we're all facing right now. And, we joked about it a couple times when we were in filming or just, driving about thinking, wow, the world is going mad. But no, it turns out that we were the idiots in some way. But we want to release those two videos in the next coming weeks. But then we also want to just do some live streams and chat away and talk about cars, because the interesting thing about you and I is that we just don't really know each other that well. We've only really been chatting for like 2 months, something like that.
Right.
And live streaming is something I want to be able to do. And, it was quite a headache figuring out all of these steps along the way, but I think we figured it out now. And this is a good way to start talking about what we want to talk about. So I'll ask you, because you say that you've been a fan of cars your entire life. Was there a distinctive moment that you remember falling in love with cars, or were you introduced it by your family? Like, what was the beginning for you?
That's a good question. I don't know if there was a precise moment, but my dad's a car guy. He's into predictably muscle cars. That's his thing. And he used to tell us he had this Camaro, and he was sort of in his 20s, which is in the 70s, and so he used to sort of regale us with stories of driving this thing around. And I also had another best friend of mine and his father who had a pretty successful career in sort of minor sort of feeder series Formula Ford cars, national champion in Canada for go-karting, things of that nature. And so I would also hear his stories, and he got me into Formula One. So I was probably 1996 is my first kind of vivid year of Formula One. So I would have been pretty young, not even 10 years old yet. Yeah, I was just watching Jacques Villeneuve, and I think that was probably the kind of early days for me of getting into cars. But I was nuts about it, man. Like I knew, a car my parents got a kick out of it because a car would drive by, and I'd say that's a whatever, like a 2001. It's this much money. It's got this engine in it, and of course, I didn't even know how to drive a vehicle. Then never had driven, but I think I knew more then about like average vehicles on the road than I know now. Now okay. I'm not a stats guy now. I rarely know like, horsepower and all of this sort of minutia. I'm like the opposite of Doug DeMuro.
Do you find yourself then caring about like the parts of the cars that don't really translate to the number sheet, like how they look and how they feel, and so those quantitative things that you can't understand until you are behind the wheel?
Yeah, yes and no. I think there's this sort of, I don't know, trope about the intangibles of vehicles, and the way that I see this manifest is in people's fascination with older cars, like generally, especially within like car nerd circles. There's a sort of generally accepted idea that older is better, older is more pure, older is somehow inherently more fun, and I get that. I totally get it. Simplicity is appealing to me. Minimalism is appealing to me. But what I'm really fascinated by is newness, new technology, new feats of efficiency and speed and complexity. That's what actually interests me. So, my car, for example, the thing that I love about my car is the fuel efficiency. I drive a NE53, and it's got the Mercedes EQ Boost system, which is a mild hybrid, a 48-volt mild hybrid system. So for me, the thing that I love the most about it, and that I talk about the most when people ask me, is, man, this thing gets great fuel economy on the highway. And I love how it, it'll shut the engine off for sometimes 15 seconds at a time when you're coasting. It's crazy. So I like that stuff. It's the newness, the high tech that really gets me going. However, having said that, like the moment I think any car guy jumps into a classic vehicle, there's a great appreciation for the simplicity of it. Like when you get out of a car and you smell like gas a little bit, you're like, this is terrible, but it's also the absolute best. So,
yeah. So then when it comes to new car technology, are you one that gets upset when people call things gimmicks? Or are you under the impression that like anything new is good and therefore worthwhile?
Well, give me an example. Like the gimmick that I think of that came to mind first was the
BMW thing.
BMW thing, right? Like to me, they've improved it, and you and I have talked about this before. They've improved it,
massively.
Yeah, so it's actually fairly functional now. And when you live with it, you're like, okay, when you have the car for more than a week, right, which is what any journalist is going to get it for typically, then you're like, wait a minute, this is kind of handy, and you find yourself doing it in a car that doesn't have it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of gimmicks that I think are totally stupid, like Mercedes Air Scarf. Do you need it? Is it gimmicky? Yes. Is it absolutely awesome to just put that thing on high in the wintertime when you get into the car? Yeah.
Do they have that on your car?
Yeah.
Is it just the convertible? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought that was just a convertible thing.
So they sell the E-Class coupes as kind of like a hardtop convertible. I know that doesn't really make sense, but because it's pillarless, right? So you can put all the windows down. You've got the air scarf, but anyways, I'm trying to think of like what is a truly stupid gimmick that makes no sense and is. How about LED lighting? Okay, this is all the rage in high-end cars. How do you feel about that? The crazy ambient lighting.
How I could change colors.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that because that adds a personality to a car, and you can find them in kind of run-of-the-mill Fords these days. Like my dad's Mustang, for example. It's a gray exterior and it's got a black and red interior, but then it also has the red ambient lighting.
Right.
So at night and the footwells are all glowing in red. I think it's cool, and it adds an element of theater, I suppose, to it.
Yeah, so it's awesome. So here we're 0 for 2 here. What's an actual gimmick that we don't like? Massaging seats. I mean, those are amazing if you've had them, but they're amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, okay. How about this? The light that illuminates on the door sill, the puddle lamps. When you open a car.
Before you get into
before you get in and the light goes onto the asphalt.
Yeah, I think it's just another, like with all of these things we're describing, in my mind, the reason they exist is because people that are buying these cars want to share these kind of features. Like if
Yeah.
you buy a brand new BMW, you want to show it off to your friends that you can do this and turn up the volume. Because I do that every time I invite my friends to come along for a drive. They'd love it. But am I going to spend extra money on it? I don't really think I would. A
How,
gimmick that I think gets in the way of life is automatic braking, because that Mazda 3, I was reversing and nothing was nearby. I was a good like 20 feet away from the wall, and the car came to a stop because it
right.
thought I was going to run into something, but it didn't. And of course, I blame these kind of systems when they don't work, because I've never been in a situation where they do work.
Right.
And in my mind, that's almost a gimmick, but I understand that, okay, yeah, I understand there's safety reasons behind it. So I need to think of
Okay.
a better
How about
thing
this? Okay. Pumping sound into the cabin.
Oh, yeah, because that's something that the manufacturers have done to themselves because they've not been able to live up to the expectations of like previous generations of
Well,
cars that were once naturally aspirated and now turbocharged.
but I get it though, because I think people want quiet, smooth, comfortable vehicles with no NVH and no wind noise, and they also want cars that have a great exhaust note and you can hear the engine. So it's these two not necessarily aligned forces, right? So I mean, I get it. I think what's happening is, especially luxury cars, right, that are just sound insulation coming out of the ass, and they're super heavy and they're full of gear gimmicks to impress people. I think if I think I'll take a little bit of pumped in noise. I'd rather have a little bit of pumped in noise, like it just doesn't bother me that much, than have a car that I felt didn't have that sort of sense of solidity and quietness that you expect when you're spending a lot of money.
Well, just kind of peeking over to the comments section here, we do have a couple of inputs towards what we think are a gimmicks. Fake exhaust from Timothy Harris.
Oh,
So I'm
yes.
guessing like, Audis, and have you seen how like in
Oh my
Fords they'll
God.
have the pipe, but it points downwards
Dude,
to the ground?
that is a perfect example. Volkswagen Group, man, they're all over
Oh,
that, and it's driving me
oh,
mental. It's
it,
so bad.
they've done it to the SQ5, which is absolutely unacceptable. But if they ever do that to an RS product, I
No,
think I might. I
no,
think
they
I
won't
might
do.
never even come close to stepping into an Audi dealership, because like there's no point. I kind of get the Ford reasoning. Do you know the Ford reasoning why they're doing that with like the new Explorer and the Lincoln
No,
Aviator?
no.
Because when you look at an exhaust pipe after driving for however long, you always get that black soot that kind of builds around the tailpipe, and they think that that's enough of a problem for people that they want to put that hole in a place that you can't usually see it. But
I'm looking at a
has that
photo of it.
really ever been a problem for people? Because okay, I don't get that.
It's just for me. It's for me. I don't care if it's like a normal vehicle and it doesn't have flashy exhaust pipes. I don't care. What to me is the worst thing is trying to fake it. It doesn't, like, who does that appeal to? Like, I don't
It's
know.
got to be someone that just doesn't care.
But then why would that person care? I mean, would they care if you didn't put, like, let's say you had a vehicle like a Golf, for example, which I think has a fake exhaust, or like a Tiguan or something. I think they all have that fake exhaust. So just don't put fake plastic exhaust on it. Just have the muffler and the exhaust pipe pointing down like they used to do way back in the day. You just don't make it a design feature. Just have a bumper, and that's it. I don't think anyone's going to, any like 35-year-old mother of three is going to give a shit about plastic fake, or whoever, like, what's the segment for that car, right? Like, family vehicle. So I don't think anybody is going to care about whether it's like oh, wait a minute, where are the exhaust pipes? They're not here. Oh, never mind. It's got the plastic molded ones. That's like, no, it's not fooling anybody. So why bother? I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that is a waste of time. Okay, we got another comment in that regard. Does your car have the illuminated Mercedes-Benz badge? Because that
In
is
the
something
front?
that people...
No.
Yeah, okay, because
That looked
that's the
gross.
comment that we've got here.
That's
towards the
extra,
gimmick.
man. I don't
You would
want
never
that.
pay money for that then?
No. I think it looks terrible. It doesn't. I've seen it a few times, and my issue with it is I don't think I'd get it anyways. But the issue I have, especially with the one I've seen, is that it's not like a really tight LED outline. It's kind of, it has a bit of, what's the word? Like a bit of a glow to it. So the Mercedes sign is not like super clear and tight like an LED would give it. But anyways, no, that's way too much.
And are they putting that in the cars that has sort of that, how the safety systems are behind that sheet of glass that is the Mercedes logo? Is it part of that as well?
Yeah, let me take a look.
Because on that exact same subject, Lincoln, on the Navigator and the Aviator, and probably another car as well, they have their illuminated badge on the front grille. And I don't hate it, because to me it is a little more tastefully designed, because the badge is this big, it isn't this big.
Right. No, I don't. It looks a bit, it's a little ostentatious for me.
Yeah, I just don't understand what the need of it is, because it doesn't work when you're driving. It's only like when you start up the car and when you walk to it, right?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. Just because
it's
we've got
thing.
a couple questions here that I want to quickly address so they aren't waiting on us. Blake Swan, he is a regular commenter and one opinion that I always look forward to on every single one of my videos. So if you're still watching, thank you very much for what you do.
Blake's Swan?
Yeah.
Blake Swan. Oh, I know that guy. I see the comments. I see the comments. Yeah.
Okay. He asked, what were / are your vehicles that you're looking most forward to driving this year? Now, that is somewhat a problem, because we don't even know if any cars being released this year we will be able to drive.
Any would be great.
Any would be great.
Any would be great. Well, sorry.
The car that I was interested in, and this is going to sound kind of weird, is the Hyundai Kona N. Because I love the Veloster N, and I'm interested to see how the mass market appeal of a subcompact SUV with the N name applies to North America, because I've stated in my video review of that car, and I've said this to many other people, that the Veloster N is one of the only cars I've reviewed that I'm seriously planning on buying one day. And I love it to bits. So I'm curious to know how the Kona N will stand up.
I've never driven a Veloster.
The Veloster N was the first and only that I've tried out.
So in that category, I've driven the Civic Type R, which I absolutely love. I think it's fantastic and manic and ridiculous, and it looks absurd, and it looks like something you'd love when you're in high school. Not to talk about extra. Everything about that car is extra, but it's just so
not the
fun.
Kind of car you go to church in.
Dude, it's so nutty. It's just like, it's ridiculous. Even like, I had my wife in the passenger seat, and she's not super into cars, and she was like, I remember her saying like, "Whoa, this car's so fun," and I was like, maybe we should get one of these. We usually don't come to agreement often on these things, but I am super excited, and this was just launched today, or announced officially, confirmed today, that this CT5V Blackwing is coming out, in the CT4V. So I have a soft spot for Cadillac. They frustrate me, but I also kind of love them. And I think they're so brash and bold and kind of different. And I think those cars are going to be wicked. I mean, this CT5V Blackwing is supposed to have 650 horsepower or something like that, and a manual transmission. So that's going to be cool. I'm not sure. I think I read that this is all just coming out today, so I think details are thin, but I think it might be coming out sometime early next year. I don't know if it was. Did you read about that today?
I saw the headline, but I didn't actually get round to reading the article today. But I don't really have an opinion towards Cadillac at all, because I haven't driven any of their new cars. I don't have a GM fleet out here for whatever reason.
Right.
And there's many of Cadillac and other GM products that I'm interested to try out. But
Corvette.
In comparison, Corvette. Oh, yeah, that comes out this year.
How have we not mentioned the Corvette?
Oh, you know what, man? I'm really hope the world gets back to normal when road conditions are good enough and GM has one in the Toronto fleet. I'd come out just for that, just to try it out.
I'm sure they will. I mean, it's interesting because I don't know if if people would be interested in this or not, but like, this is not my main gig. This is not how I put food on the table. So like, I'm a full-time brewery operator here in Toronto. So, anyways, that is to say, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to do any reviews again, but when you reached out to me, Max, I thought, hey, let's test it out, do a couple reviews, see how it goes, and then I think we were ready to roll through, and you were prepared maybe to consider even moving here just to work together at some point. But I couldn't have predicted a global pandemic. So here we are. Yeah. We're kind of both frozen out.
Well, I left Toronto on March 16th, and that was the day after Canada banned international travel. So I really left at the perfect time. And, of course, I was always going to come back. I had an apartment that I needed to clear out and get other things lined up. And one of the things I'll probably bring up in a future video is what I want to pursue outside of car journalism. And those plans have been totally thrown out the window because of this pandemic. So as soon as the world gets back to normal, I'm going to give Toronto a good 6-month stint. Try and give as much as I can to figure it all out.
So warms my heart.
Yeah,
warms my heart to see a Westerner.
A couple Black Wings, and
so
you'll be a
fond
very happy
of Toronto.
boy.
Yeah. It just warms my heart to see a Westerner coming to Toronto and being so fond of it. I think the funny, if you're from Toronto, like the joke is basically everybody hates us. Everyone hates us, and I don't think about anybody else, to be perfectly honest.
That's where the center of the universe kind of nickname comes from, right?
100%. I totally get it. But anyway, so I'm looking forward to it. But Corvette is the obvious one. I don't know. I think maybe it's because of my dad. I kind of grew up having a real soft spot for American manufacturers. It's frustrating because some of the cars they put out are such shit, and it frustrates me that they're constantly positioning themselves as value brand relative to European competition. And to me, it's like, man, just make the car better. Just, here's an example for you. Like Ford products, the interior on so many of their vehicles are just not good. Or I had last year, just a completely standard run of the mill vehicle that I remember was equipped to, I think, somewhere around $45,000, which is one of the most expensive in the class, 45 or 48. But it had everything. It had like the infotainment, an amazing screen out of Cadillac products. It had some nice interior bits overall. It was like quiet. It got, it was like surprisingly good in some ways. But then there was a piece of leather on the dashboard that was like misstitched, and there was a badge on the tailgate that was clearly crooked, and there were a bunch of things where I was like, how does it, I worked in a car factory when I was 18. I worked at Honda.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that.
For basically a year, and then when I was a student, they have a special student program where they did, and I would go back every Friday and work something like a 4 to or maybe a 5 o'clock till 1 a.m. shift, something to that effect. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, I worked at a station that put the badge on the back of a Honda Ridgeline, and it was impossible for you to screw this thing up because there was a little plastic guide, right? And you'd put it on the back, and if you did screw it up, someone would find it right away, and they'd stop the line and they'd rip it off, and you'd put a new one on. So the fact that it could come out of the factory that way blew my mind. But here's the thing, Savage Geese?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So he reviewed one a couple of weeks ago, and same issue on his vehicle, exact same badge was crooked. So
wait, we're talking about the Lincoln here?
No. We're talking about the Chevy Equinox.
Oh, the Equinox. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. And so I was like, wait a minute. A year later, this wasn't a one-off. This wasn't a Friday afternoon shift before a long weekend or something. This is like
Monday hangover.
Some fundamental problem they have. So that's what frustrates me about it. But anyways, I still have a soft spot for Mustangs and Corvettes and Cadillacs, and
The more expensive an American car gets, the less interesting it is for me, unless it is a very highly specific application like a full GT or Corvette ZR1, because I see, you know, the Cadillac Escalade and the Yukon Denali, and I think if I was an individual that had a family and $100,000 to spend on that kind of car, unless I really am using it for heavy towing applications, then that really isn't my life at all. What draws me to a car like this versus the Europeans? But I am being somewhat encouraged to believe that they're addressing these problems. Like we've now seen the new Tahoe, the new Escalade, and like they're really trying to do new things. So I'm always hopeful, but constantly let down.
Well, the new Corsair has a pretty nice interior.
I like the Corsair more than the Aviator,
which is really surprised. I haven't been in an Aviator, to be perfectly honest with you, but I was surprised to hear that just based on how they're positioned in the lineup. I mean, the Corsair is based on the Ford Escape. Is the same platform, right? Smaller. Mm-hmm. Anyways, but what if you're spending $100,000 on a car? You have a lot of really good options. Like that's the sweet spot. If you're looking for something new and you get to 100, that's like the world's your oyster. What do you get if you got 100 grand?
Am I only allowed one car?
Right now.
Kind of similar conversation. One of them. Another thing I would really consider is something like a lightly used Cayman GTS.
Yes, very well equipped.
Yeah, that kind of.
Yeah, how much is the Cayman GTS new? It's under 100.
The new one, and they're coming out with a 4-liter naturally aspirated engine for this upcoming year as well. Oh, that could be another one for the list of.
92,000. Here's the thing: we're a 2-car family, right? We've got a big dog, and we wanted something that was utilitarian and pretty sizable and more of a mainline car, just to stop spending so much money. So we got that one, and then it was like, okay, the second one we can have fun with. And initially, we were looking at sports cars, and I was looking at like the Z4, the new Z4, which is, has a lot of haters, but I just like the way it looks. And it's pretty quick and kind of cool. And convertibles are just fun. They're just fun. And of course, the Cayman or the Boxster. But the reason why I was never too serious about it is the 4-cylinder, man. I cannot get over it. I can't get over it. I'm not an anti-4-cylinder person. It's just that it's so uninspiring. It sounds like a weird Subaru lawnmower. Like it just doesn't. It's quick and it's like a super competent, fantastic vehicle. It's everything that and you've read 100 times about it. But whoa.
Yeah, GTSs will have the naturally aspirated 6, and of course they've got the GT4 and the GT4 RS potentially coming out too. And it seems as though like the base 718 and the 718S might keep with that 4-cylinder just because they're the volume models. But it is encouraging that these companies actually listen to us in a way. How much is it depending on what the journalists and the media says versus what actual customers say? That's always been something I've been curious to ask manufacturers. Like how much opinion from people like us do they listen to versus the general public?
Being in a business that sells something to people, I can tell you what the ultimate opinion is, and it's sales, right? It's hard data. And if I were better at my job right now in terms of car journalism, or I were someone like Zach Spencer, I would be able to probably tell you what Porsche's sales have been for the past 2 years. I think they haven't been great for that particular vehicle. So this could simply be. You're right. I think if we want to be optimistic about it, it could be that they realize as an enthusiast brand they better appeal to enthusiasts, but I imagine it's probably reflected in the hard data, but I don't actually know that, so I'm furiously Googling while we're talking right now.
Well, I imagine that anybody that labels themselves an enthusiast will get some kind of upset towards the dying art of using a manual transmission, and this is a conversation that's been going on for years. This isn't anything new, but at the end of the day, people just aren't buying them. And it is upsetting to me that, rather common cars can't come with a manual these days, because even, here's something I don't think I've ever said to you. I love being in the smallest, cheapest car I can, because For a tall guy like me, there's some kind of inherent comedy in it that I'm a part in. Like, I want an original Mini Cooper just because I think it would be funny.
You know that episode of The Simpsons where this guy gets out of the small car and he's like, "Are you making fun of the size of my automobile?" And he's this huge, tall guy. Do you know that? No,
I didn't really watch The Simpsons.
Oh my God!
Another
wait, so
difference
you're a
between
little
you
bit
and I.
younger.
A little bit is a bit liberal of a statement.
So how old are you?
I am 24.
Okay, so we're almost a decade apart. So that would explain it, because I was on the tail end of the sort of Simpsons generation.
Okay.
But nonetheless, still, watched it growing up. Okay, so I can confirm, by the way, that Cayman sales have been unimpressive for the past 3 years. So.
And what about 911? Does it say anything about the 911? Did turbocharging affect that car at all?
I would. This is making for a great live streaming here.
That's all right.
Welcome to the Mike searches for sales information on his phone podcast.
We do need a name for this live stream / podcast, and I've got many ideas.
What I just said was great. I think we go with that one. Mike looks up Porsche sales information on his cell phone. That's a winner.
I think that can get dry pretty quickly.
No, 911 sales in the U.S. anyways are fantastic. Yeah, up over prior 2 years.
Well,
there
fantastic.
You have it.
I'm going to move on to the next question from my good friend Joe. He asks, what was the standout car of last year? Now, talking 2019, of course, I was reviewing cars. Did you review any in 2019, or were you done by that time?
I did some stuff early in the year. I think I went to the LA Auto Show. No, I didn't. I can't. I was getting married in 2019. I had no time.
Okay.
And the job and everything. So I'm just going back in time now. So I think the last car I did was sometime in early summer of 2019.
Okay, so then I'll give you a minute to perhaps think about that 2-year stint that you reviewed card. What was
my
the
favorite
absolute standout? Yeah, and I'll say for my last year of 2019, for me, because I've already talked about the Veloster N, I'm going to discount that. For me, It was the BMW M340i, just because I thought it was a truly interesting car. It didn't just seem like a bit of a badge job. It felt like a very well-rounded vehicle that had a lot of performance and a lot of interest to actually get moving, because I'd driven the M550i before it, and I did not like that car at all. And I was fearful that the same fears that I had in that car were going to translate over to this one, and it didn't. I thought it was the standout of last year for sure.
I haven't driven the new one. I've had 2 3 Series actually. One was a 328 sedan, 4-cylinder, boring, and the other one was a touring, a wagon, which was like awesome, great car.
Gas or diesel?
The ultimate spec for me is the diesel with the 6-speed transmission, but alas, it was the 2-liter 4-cylinder with the 8-speed ZF, like half of the rest of the automotive world right now.
Still a decent car, though.
Uninspiring, I think, in that range of vehicle, but utterly competent and classic. And one thing that BMW nails, and I think I said this to you when we were driving the X3M, is BMW seating positions are always really great. Like, I remember I'd be driving this car that was twice the cost, and then I'd drop it off and get into my 3 Series and be like, man, it's low. They let you get really nice and low in the seat, and very aggressive seats. The sport seats, even in the standard 4-cylinder 3 Series, are really great. And I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'2", and I'm like pretty leggy. And so having the manual thigh adjustment was great, even in some of their more base level vehicles. So they always nail that. But
it does seem, though, as the majority of car journalists just so happen to be taller chaps. Like, why is that the case?
That does seem to be the case. But I mean, I'm thinking of you and I. So you're 6'3" and a bit, or 6'4". I'm 6'2". We're both quite thin, but 2 of us in a Miata it didn't leave much to the imagination. We fit, but but barely. There's a lot of man touching.
There's a lot of man touching, and there's plenty of those things that we'll bring up in that video. But the reason I bring it up is that like cars really aren't designed for people like us, because from what I understand, the 95th percentile, which is anybody under 6 foot, is kind of where cars are designed around, and anybody outside of that is just lucky or unlucky. And I found that out by listening to another journalist podcast, and he's sort of our size. And for a lot of the cars he gets in, he'll immediately write off because he doesn't fit or he isn't comfortable. And as much of an opinion we can bring towards a car, saying how much we enjoy the seats, those are one of the aspects of driving a car that we can inform you, but we're never going to be able to probably align to what your truth is.
It's especially seats. Seats is a great example of that. I mean, a lot of people, let's take Lincoln's, what do they call them? Perfect position seats, or like 32 way adjustable. They've got it in almost all their cars now. I love them. They really work for me, but a lot of people don't like them. And
I've never had a problem with them.
Yeah, me neither. So maybe it's a tall guy thing, because you know who doesn't like them? Zach. Zach doesn't. He's not short exactly, but he doesn't like them.
Okay.
And I've run into a lot of people, and now that I'm thinking about it, they were more average height, and they were not super pumped with them. But seats are like highly personal. But on the topic of seats, that's something that is like a decision driver for me in a car.
Oh, yeah.
Not just from a comfort perspective, but the way it looks. Like when I get into a car and I'm like, what the hell is
description model, beautiful leather all throughout it, and I had a friend helping me out that week because I had to take 2 cars in and out of the city, and I basically didn't allow him the option of getting into the XC60 just because I wanted to spend an hour behind the wheel driving it. Moving on to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, if you got some questions, we should answer them, but we should probably talk about the MX-5.
Well, the question that I have lined up right away is relating to the MX-5. You want to hear it?
I do.
Okay, so DJL66 says, I'm in the market for a pre-owned MX-5 RF. I found a 2017 launch edition for $24,000 US and a 2019 for $27,000. Both have under 10,000 miles. Both machine gray, Auburn interior. Is the extra horsepower worth it? And that's one of the first things people address, is the difference between those two cars is the newer one makes
more revs,
more power. But for taller people like you and I, the telescoping steering wheel is the most important thing.
Okay, so what I want to know is why an RF? Why an RF?
Why did they want an RF?
Why an RF? Why an RF Roadster? Because I would just go with a normal Roadster, but
let's see if they respond.
Because the RF is a little bit heavier, right? Which is what 2,500 pounds, I think, is the RF. The Mazda Miata's thing is its lightness, and I think you get less of the thing when you add 100. It's 100 kilos? 100 kilos
113 pounds.
113 pounds. What is that? 50 kilos or so. So you're, and it's more expensive when you buy it new. It's more expensive. They start at like $43,000 or something, right? Like the one we had was like 46.
Was it 46 or 49? I can't even remember now. I think I thought it was just under 40.
Damn near $50,000, right? And once you start calculating or factoring in your taxes, it's over $50,000, which everyone says, smiles per dollar, it's the winner on the road, but it actually is not super cheap. But anyway, so I would say find a Roadster, but there's probably a good reason why he's looking for it. But
then returning more strictly to their question, do you think that $3,000? Yeah, you had your own little tangent there. The difference between those two cars at $3,000, in my mind, with the benefits that we've just stated, you also get a backup camera. You get a little bit of
Android
a different
Auto
interior. No. That
was the 3 we were in. Yep.
Yeah. I'd say yes. I think the more expensive car is worth it. If you're a taller chap, extra horsepower, you won't necessarily notice the power, but you will notice the red line. And that, I think, is a more important thing about that engine.
Agreed.
Okay, then there's that question answered. Let's see if... DJL66. I live in Pittsburgh and I don't have room in my garage for another car. So I imagine this RF is to be the car to satisfy all things. If you are buying an RF and you're intending to do a lot of miles in it, like highway miles, that's where you'll notice the benefits. But if it's a one-car garage, what a nice one-car garage that would be.
I love MX-5s, man. They're so awesome. So fun.
SKV Guardian says, what are your thoughts on the new EV Hummer? I have many.
I have none.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. Hang on a second.
Well, nobody's seen it yet. It's just been those teaser images so far.
Of course. Okay, so it hasn't been launched, right? It's just has it? Are there official images that have been released of this, or
no official images? It's just been that grill and the Super Bowl commercials that were giving those crazy numbers, 11,500 pound-feet of torque, that kind of a thing.
LeBron James is somehow associated with it, and 0 to 60 in 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
You know what, man? I think the original Hummer, the H2, will forever in my mind be associated with the character in Breaking Bad who drives. Have you seen Breaking Bad?
I have, but who drives it? I can't remember now.
Or is it Better Call Saul? I can't. Anyways, it's this nerdy guy who's a baseball collector, and he drives a bright yellow. No.
Oh, it's got to be Better Call Saul.
Better Call Saul, yeah. Anyway, so he drives this Tonka truck-styled Hummer, and to me, it's whenever I think of a Hummer, that's what I think of. But anyways, terrible, absolutely terrible. But I think it's cool and forward-thinking that they're looking electric. I'm cool with all EVs. I'm on the EV hype train. Mm-hmm. I think they're great. I think they're fun. I think they're totally unlike anything. And as an enthusiast who usually cares about niche enthusiast things, I still am very captivated by them for totally different reasons than I'd be in a normal traditional vehicle. So I'm having admittedly not particularly familiar with this particular vehicle. I think I'm for it.
Well, I'm all
see how it looks.
EVs as well. That'll be a telling thing of what it actually looks like. But I'm all for EVs as well. We can have a very separate conversation towards that, but the EV Hummer I am particularly interested in because that's meant to be the new foundation of all future GM electric vehicles. It has a battery pack that's twice as thick as what you'll find in the Bolt, and it's got a new platform that should underpin everything from an electric Tahoe to Silverado, perhaps, and with them bringing this brand back from the dead to try and make a real, perhaps, luxury product. Because Hummer was expensive when it was a new car, but it wasn't, in the way that a Mercedes is expensive. It's expensive the way that a Jeep Wrangler is expensive. It has that image. I don't think that image will necessarily carry over. I don't think anybody's going to be buying the new Hummer EV because they're more focused on off-road ability, but they're just a very passionate EV buyer that has what could be the most compelling EV truck in the next year or two.
Cybertruck or Hummer EV or...
do you have thoughts towards that?
I just think it's hilarious. It just makes me laugh. And I feel like I would... do you see how big they are?
Well... I've seen
have you seen it beside? So have you seen it beside an F-150? It's huge, man, and I think that's what people don't realize. But I think it's hilarious. I like Tesla. Just makes me laugh because they've first of all they've done something truly impressive, which has become synonymous with electric vehicles, and still in many respects, in most respects, I think, leading the segment. And other manufacturers, standard kind of manufacturers, traditional OEMs, Mercedes-Benz and Audi are now starting to sort of play catch up and still not surpassing mileage and range and performance and so on.
Yeah.
for the most part. And so I really like them. I would own one if I lived in a home where I could charge. We've looked into trying to get them in our building, and we can't.
Well,
so
you said when you were looking to buy your new car, which turned out to be the Santa Fe, you were really hoping that you could find a plug-in hybrid.
Plug-in hybrid.
But there wasn't really anything available.
No.
So when it comes to electric car adoption, okay. And when it comes to electric car adoption, that is the biggest problem for you, is that you've got no way of charging it in your apartment.
Yeah, I live in a condo, and it's they're not interested in installing. Every year they're asked, and they decide they elect not to install charging banks. So anyways, I'm geared to kind of like Tesla. The truck looks ridiculous. Like it. Come on, it's not attractive. It's just so hilarious
about cars. But the Cybertruck was like, people that I haven't heard from in a while. It's like, what do you think about the Cybertruck? Like, people wanted to hear my opinions on that.
They smash through the mainstream, man. Like that's what Tesla does. They define the category. They've made EVs a thing, and they've made them cool. And look at that ridiculous truck. And they rolled it out, and I have people, as you say, in my life who don't know the first thing about cars asking me about it. So that is a huge success.
Yeah, I do hope they build them, because I think it could be a very interesting world with them. Okay, the next question I have is, what is the most pleasingly surprising feature of a car you've ever encountered? This is kind of maybe a gimmick kind of a thing, of how you have heated and cooled cup holders.
Oh, I thought you were going to say heated and ventilated seats.
Oh no, that's a necessity.
Because then you have them; they're getting warm, but you're sucking the air, so it's keeping you nice and dry. That's key. But heated and cooled cup holders, that's a good feature.
Yeah, and that's something I didn't realize mattered until I think I was filming the BMW X7. I had my cup of coffee. For me, I'm usually filming the interior for about an hour. And being able to reach for my coffee and it's still being hot after an hour, it's like, this works for me. I'm into that.
Yeah. I mean, I really, really like heads-up display. That's not revolutionary in any way. It's becoming super common, but I love heads-up displays. What else? Like radar-guided cruise control. I am a religious user of it. And again, it's another thing that's coming. Read on your own. And I know tons of people. My wife never uses it, for example. I know tons of people who never use it. They're like, I love it, man. You do a lot of highway miles. It's fantastic. So
I'd also put into the list of pleasing features, when they work properly, as automatic parking. Because that's another thing you kind of show off to people. And I've experienced different brands' systems, and they've all worked to varying degrees of success. But when they work well in an instant, you need them to work. I'm always calmed by it.
Yeah.
Like your system on your Mercedes is good, but like Lincoln, the first car I ever tested it with was a Lincoln Continental. Parallel parked perfectly. Perpendicular parking, it was like I was parking drunk. It was terrible.
Yeah, I still don't trust it. Even though the one on my car, it'll actually shift gears for you, and you'll go from park to reverse into forward gear and then into park. I'm always like hovering my foot, like ready to take over, which is sort of it's supposed to put me at ease, but I'm probably more paranoid, just sort of almost a backseat driver kind of mentality. But I use that fairly frequently too.
I've just got one quick question to address. Do I fit in a GTS? I'm presuming that means the Cayman GTS, and I've driven a Cayman S on a racetrack, so I can only say yes, I can.
Yes,
fit in a GTS.
But what I've learned is that our proportions are different, man.
You're going to grill me right now, aren't you?
So Max is taller than me, quite noticeably, a couple of inches. But when we get into a car, he's granny style, sitting super close to the steering wheel. And I have figured it out: is your length is in your upper body, whereas mine is mostly legs. So we don't we have to readjust our seats often when we're getting in after one another.
Yeah, that could probably be our falling out in the future, of like getting the seating position just a little bit wrong and being like, "Oh, Mike, I hate that guy. What's he doing to me?"
That's a skit idea. You got to send that idea to Throttle House. They'll make a funny skit out of it.
But, well, we get in so many cars these days that have that memory programmed. And I guess the point of it is for individuals like us, if you've got, the tall husband and the short wife or whatever it is, you just quickly hit a button and go. I think it's going to be more relevant to keep our relationship afloat, is that kind of a feature in a car.
Sure.
Let's move on to another. Okay, yeah, people have loved our feedback towards the Cybertruck, but the Rivian, we didn't actually say, that is potentially the most surprising car company that has come out in the last 20 years. Like I'm not, I'm not diehard towards any sort of brand. I don't care what kind of badge has towards it, but because Rivian came out with what they claim is the production car before anybody had ever really heard of them, and it seems to be such a well-proven concept, and they've got so much money from Amazon and Ford and all the rest of it. That's a company that they were meant to come out with the car at the end of this year, actually, but they've delayed it to next year due to the pandemic. So I desperately hope I can get behind the wheel one of those, because they just look classy.
You won't be able to.
You don't think so?
Well, they may take a page out of Tesla's book, which is basically, we don't work with journalists unless you're like Motor Trend or something. So the truth, I think, for Tesla anyways, is they don't need to, right? They don't need the traditional automotive media coverage. Anyways, Rivian, super cool, man. Super cool. Way cooler looking. Like, just looking at the design, way cooler than Cybertruck. I mean, Cybertruck is a laugh, right? It's a troll job. Rivian is an actual
the
vehicle.
Cybertruck is for the extrovert that's dying for attention, and the Rivian is perhaps, the older statesman that is just trying to get to and from with as little negative attention as possible.
Well, what's the worst thing about a truck? For me, anyways, I love trucks, because the moment you have it, you realize how handy it is to just be able to throw shit in the back. But the worst thing is they're huge, and if I live in a city, the fuel economy is generally not that great if you're just driving around. They're okay on the highway now, all these turbocharged 6 cylinders and whatnot, but around town
with 1,000 speed gearboxes.
Yeah, 10 speed gearboxes and everything. But an electric version, all that utility, and the Rivian's like funky like storage compartments and stuff behind the cab. Like there's the weird like tent thing you can put. Anyways, it just looks super cool. It's got kind of a Wrangler vibe to it, right? We're talking about Wrangler kind of high-end vehicles, more like Wrangler, less like European luxury.
Yeah, well, one of the things with Rivian is that they're really trying to sell that it's an adventure vehicle. Like, you will buy these cars because you go fishing, you go backcountry skiing, all that kind of a thing, which is a separate conversation to the car company, but that's kind of like their marketing strategy. Next question I'd like to address is, where's it gone? William Harris, what are your thoughts on the potential next-gen Mazda 6 with an inline 6 and rear-wheel drive? Have you heard this news?
I have not.
Because it's just been confirmed today. It was kind of in the rumor mill, but it has been confirmed today.
So as the Mazda enthusiast that you are, and the Mazda owner, what are your thoughts here?
I look forward to it, but I feel like it's the wrong car for right now. I feel like they should be spending... Okay, right. Before I get too ahead of myself, this car and its platform is meant to be the structure for all of their larger SUVs as well. So even though they're coming out with the Mazda 6 first, it will underpin the next CX-9 and whatever next car they come with. And the inline 6s they're developing with Toyota as well that could potentially be in a Toyota of some kind. But I feel like it's the wrong car for right now. I feel like they should be coming out with the most luxurious next generation CX-9 because that's what people are buying, even though there's still a certain demographic of people that want the next 5 Series or the next E-Class. And maybe, this could be an option for them. But we all know where the market's going.
Right.
I imagine it will be a success. I just don't think it's the success it needs to be. I think it needs to be sent over to an SUV to get more widespread appeal.
It's crazy to me how poor sedans sell, just across the board. And I think the best you could hope for that vehicle is a big piece of a very small slice, if that makes sense. You know, and so I kind of, without knowing a whole lot about this particular vehicle, sounds like they're going more athletic, and obviously Mazda has always been that, or recently anyways, has become kind of an almost near luxury for a lot of their models.
The car we tried out together was the Mazda 3, and that's the next sort of step towards their idea that they want to become a luxury brand without having to, totally, make a Lexus version of their car, come out with a new name and all the rest of it.
The 330
currently. And then what underpins this Mazda 6 is what will be all their larger cars. And I think Mazda needs more SUVs anyway. They need like a CX-7, a 5-seater version of the CX-9 in the same way that, Honda made the Pilot into the Passport, just because there's a gap in the market, and that's what manufacturers do these days.
I love how they need it. Like they've already got five, but we need it. You go the Mercedes route, which is like, you've got 6 or 7 different versions, and then 3 or 4 of those versions have coupe coupe styles, and it's just ridiculous. Like the number of SUVs, like how thin can you get it?
The company with the largest vehicle portfolio because they have so many variations. It's got to be them or BMW.
Must be Mercedes.
We can do the math on that some other time. Okay, we're running at an hour, Mike. Do we want to answer a few more questions and then get out of here? Or how are you feeling?
Let's call it at 10, quarter past.
Quarter past. Okay, well, let's answer a couple more questions quickly. This is a time that you guys can send in any questions, and hopefully we will be able to answer them ahead of time. Timothy Harris says, cooled seats are so underrated. I agree. Do you agree, Mike?
That cooling seats are underrated?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. They're the best. When you get in a car that's been sitting in a parking lot in the summer, just fire up.
Black leather.
Oh, just fire up the cooled seats. What they need is cooled steering wheel. That's something I've been complaining about. We need to get cooled steering wheel because it gets super hot. Anyways, agreed.
I feel like the next, we've got heated seats, heated steering wheel, heated armrest on with both the CTV Blackwing thing and the CT5 Blackwing thing. Seems they have an M2 and an M5 fighter, but no M3 competitor. Is that a smart move or no? Okay, so before we answer that question, Mike, do you understand what the CT4 competes against and what the CT5 competes against?
No, but I don't think it matters. I mean, it's like an in-betweensy vehicle.
Yes. Yeah.
It's cutting it in half.
So, like, the point of the CT4 is it's meant to compete against something like an Audi A3, but it's the size of an Audi A4.
Yes.
And then the CT5 is the same thing with the 3 Series and 5.
They've done that. They've historically done that, right? Like the CTSV did that as well.
Yes, and the CT5 is meant to be the replacement to the CT. So what do you think about that?
I think
that the Blackwing versions are going to be worthwhile?
No, I know we mentioned this, I think, right when we kicked off, but I have a soft spot for Cadillac. I absolutely adore the CTSV. I love that they just cram these ridiculous, boisterous, powerful V8 engines under the hood. And that car was just so composed and balanced and fun and accessible, but also would totally try to kill you if you turned the traction control off and weren't careful with it. So it was a thrill, and it's different. Mm-hmm. I've just seen, like everybody else today, I've just seen the images of the new ones. I don't care about how it cuts class. That doesn't really bother me too much.
So
but
you
know what I like?
For
$85,000 US. 600 or 640 horsepower, manual transmission available. I bet you 95% of them sell with automatics, but nonetheless, it's available. I think it's fantastic. I think it looks great. The CT5 looks fantastic. Super aggressive.
You have no bother that it might compete against an M3, but it's slightly larger than an M3. You're not. That doesn't matter.
I don't know why it would bother me. I mean, I think it is it's the intent of Cadillac to probably cut that in half and cut the difference. I mean, I can't afford an E63 or an M5. but I might be able to stretch for a CT5 Blackwing that's might be faster and more fun to drive. That's how I look at it.
I think the biggest problem is that they've already killed the CT6, right? And that was meant to be an opportunity to do it. So I guess answering Blake's question, is that a smart move? In your opinion, it is a smart move.
I don't know if it's smart. I mean, the time will tell, but I think it's been purposeful.
Yeah.
And I think if you get into, if the car is good, it will help. Like if you get into the car and it's fantastic to drive, like its predecessor was, then and if it corrects some of the problems of its predecessors, then I think people will care less about its sort of tween kind of categorization, if we can call it that.
That's a good way to put it. Tween. I like that.
Tween.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it as such. I think when anybody is going to cause some performance detriment, perhaps, but maybe not enough that anybody's going to be seriously upset by it. Or at least that's my prediction.
They were always a little bit lighter too, so I mean, I don't know what the weight is going to be. I think we need more information, but I think it's going to be fun. The CT5 especially.
Wireless phone pairing on my BMW rocks. Yes, I think the newest BMWs I've been in have been very successful, but I did have a couple of hiccups along the way in some other cars I've tested previously. Here's a good comment. Cybertruck is a masterclass in marketing, it not in actual reality. I like that.
But you know what? Everyone said that about Tesla from day one. Proliferating all over the place, at least in where I live. So.
I see them everywhere here too. And like mountain town where they shouldn't really live, you think that they wouldn't be that successful. I mean, we've got one supercharger in town and one public charging station. People still want them. They're still desirable things. And,
everyone lives in homes.
Yeah.
Everyone has a home, right? You get your own. You can't buy one without you. I tried to live a week with an EV without my own charger. I thought, there's tons in Toronto. There's there are more supercharger stations or more EV plug-in stations here than anywhere else in Canada. And no, it's not possible. It was a huge pain in the ass.
We could probably have a whole separate conversation towards Tesla, but I'll save that one.
We need to get Zach on for that.
He might bring our ratings down.
Zach's a Tesla hater.
I know. What's the best value deluxe 10-year-old sedan out there? Wow, okay. So when it comes to new cars versus old cars, I'm not really that well versed in old cars because I've always been the guy who knew the latest and greatest thing back to front.
Yeah, but 10 years is not a long time ago.
Well, we're talking about any 10-year-old. Okay,
here's the thing.
Value.
Here's the thing about technology that again, I like new stuff as well. That's totally my bent. But 10-year-old infotainment is like laughable. Like when you get back into like an E-Class from 10 years ago, you're going to be like, oh my God, it's the worst. There's like the number pad on the dashboard and the info, it's just so impossibly slow. Yeah. And I think it'll be tough to find a 10-year-old Lux. If you go back to like the mid 2000s, you can get tons of them that weren't equipped with the like extra infotainment package. But I think it'll be pretty hard to find one from only 10 years ago that doesn't have one, like an E-Class or something. But
so then I'll go completely left field and I'll say forget any luxury brand, go for like a Chevy Impala or something.
What?
Because those will probably have 100,000 miles on them, probably well maintained, and be as dull as you like. So they'll be great.
Probably $3,000. So you'll get it nice and cheap.
Okay.
We didn't answer the question at all.
No, sorry, Mum. Right, DJL66. What are your thoughts on other car vloggers? Thoughts on how straight pipes, Hoovy, MBBs, Micah Museum. I don't know. Okay, that tells you two things. I don't know who these last two people are. I know the first two people quite well, in terms of that I sometimes watch their videos, and I believe they are very successful, and they deserve all their praise. But in the world of car journalism, I almost never watch other people's videos. The first reason is that I've always been afraid that I'm just going to copy what they say if it's a car that I am likely going to receive. And then the second reason is that I just don't consume videos like what I did when I was a teenager.
Yeah,
and that's my opinion on the first two. The other two I don't watch because I don't think I know who they are.
Burn.
That's not an insult. It's just there's very
few.
Okay,
No.
I'll tell you what. I watch exactly 2 YouTube channels regularly: Carfection and Driven Car Reviews with Tom Volk. Those are the only two.
So, by far, my favorite is Chris Harris.
Oh God, yeah.
He's fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. I'm envious of how natural he is and how compelling he is on camera. And it seems genuine. I haven't met him, so I have no idea, but it seems genuine, and he's smart and he's articulate and always comes up with an interesting way of, quite humorous on occasion, of describing funny things about vehicles, and very skillful. And I mean, he's not editing the videos he's in, obviously, but they're always beautifully well shot, and he's a good follow on Instagram as well. But yeah, I mean, more local, like Straight Pipes and Throttle House are Toronto guys, and we run into them, or back when I was going to events and things like that, or out and about more often than I am now, you run into them occasionally. All good dudes, crazy successful, crazy hardworking. Like, I don't think that people understand how much effort goes into producing a video a week, especially when you look at the production value of what Throttle House is doing. It's nutty. Really, like it could be like an Amazon special almost, or like a Netflix type of show. And especially as it concerns a Throttle House with this sort of, it's almost like cinematic at times. It's a lot of effort on the technical side and on the film and shooting side. But yeah, the skits are really original. Like, they've all come up with their own stuff, right? And it's great. And I guess what is Straight Pipes went from like nothing 3 years ago to like, I think they're coming up on 1 million subs right now. But they're crazy. Like, the amount of stuff that they're doing, it's nonstop. It's 2 of them full time, shooting, editing, all the Instagram and social media stuff they do. Like, I think they're probably exhausted all the time.
Yeah, well, I imagine right now that everyone in this industry that's been, I mean, that's kind of the topic of right now, is that nobody's getting any cars in the foreseeable future. So that's just a way to sort of everyone to calm down and maybe catch their breath. Maybe it will be good for them, but they'll come right back and make good work of when everything goes back to normal, I'm sure. All right, this is going to be our last question of the night. Timothy Harris says, will the Ford Motor Company be around in 10 years' time?
Yes. Submitted with no further comment.
Okay. I think yes, absolutely. They still sell like 900,000 F-150s a year, and that's really the only thing they'd have to sell to be successful. I do think they've made a mistake by saying they're not making cars outside of the Mustang, cars as in sedans and little hatchbacks and so on. I think that's going to be a potential problem. But otherwise, I've got no reason to think they won't exist. I just don't think they're the norm anymore. When like people think of a car company, I don't think people think of Ford anymore. I think they're thinking of people that are a little further ahead of the game, like, we've discussed Tesla and Rivian and all that kind of stuff, but that's another conversation for another day. All right, we're now wrapping it up at about 1 hour and 15 minutes. This has been great fun, Mike. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Who knew we could talk for 1 hour and 15 minutes without getting bored?
Well,
I mean, I can. I'm an expert at rambling, but we've gotten on here.
I wasn't bored, and I'm glad we had people ask us questions. We don't know if this time sort of works for people or not. We're working on 2 totally different time zones here. So how it relates to people watching elsewhere in the world, if this is a good viewing time for you. And we want to return at the same time next week. So, Mike, thank you very much for joining me.
And there's a video dropping tomorrow. You got to plug the video.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got the video coming tomorrow. It's with the Mazda MX-5 RF. It's the first video Mike and I did together, and we're quite happy with it. There's certainly things that we've learned in that video that we applied to the next video, and we had great fun. So we would really love to hear your feedback on that video. We address that at the end of that video too, because obviously right now we've got time to work on the concept, and hopefully when things get back to normal, Mike and I will be making movies again together.
With any luck.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching, and we hope to hear from you again soon. Say bye to the camera.